Jake didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in the living room, sidearm on the table, laptop open, camera feeds running on loop. His jaw clenched every time the grainy black and white footage of the hooded figure replayed. Aconitum wasn't just, it was intentional. You don't accidentally get wolfsbane into someone's food. Whoever did this meant harm, and they had chosen Emily, his pregnant wife, as their target. The scariest part. It was only the beginning. The next morning, Jake called in a few favors. His old partner, Dom, still working downtown narcotics, met him at a diner 15 miles out, over coffee. Jake laid it out. The HOA, the strange welcome, the food poisoning, the tainted muffins, the figure on the porch. Dom gave a low whistle, and your lab guy confirmed the aconite. Jake nodded. Trace levels. Not enough to show up unless you're looking for it, but it's there. Dom leaned back, eyebrows raised. You think it's the HOA president? I know it is. But I don't have enough to charge her. Dom glanced around and lowered his voice. Jake, you're in suburbia now. These places have politics. Judges owe favors to HOA boards. You go in half-cocked. They'll crucify you before you get your badge back. Jake's eyes narrowed. She went after my wife, Dom. I get it, Dom said. Just ... play it smart. Build the case right. Back home, Jake checked on Emily, who was sleeping lightly in their bedroom. She looked pale again, thinner. Her pregnancy glow was gone. Something vital was being drained from her. Jake scanned the kitchen. Every cabinet, every spice, every supplement. He opened a tin of green tea she'd started drinking after the welcome gift came. It was supposed to be caffeine-free for expectant mothers. It smelled faintly of flowers. Wolfsbane was a flower. He placed the tin into an evidence bag and marked it. Then he checked the trash bin outside. It was already empty. The garbage truck had come an hour earlier and usually. Early. Jake checked the street camera. The driver wasn't city sanitation. The truck was unmarked. No logo, no ID. And behind the wheel. The same man who'd been raking imaginary leaves the day they moved in. Jake's blood ran cold. The next HOA meeting was mandatory for new homeowners. Jake told Emily to stay home and rest. No arguments. He arrived at the clubhouse just past sunset. The room was filled with smiling faces and fresh lemonade. Cynthia stood at the head of the room, welcoming everyone like royalty in a castle. She locked eyes with Jake the moment he walked in and smiled. It was the smile that bothered him most. Controlled, calculated, patient. When she spoke, it was like a sermon. Here in Serenity Grove, we believe in cleanliness, order, and most of all, peace. Anyone who disturbs that peace, well, they tend to find themselves uncomfortable here. Jake sat quietly, observing. The way people nodded, smiled in sync. It wasn't a neighborhood, it was a cult. When refreshments were served, Cynthia approached him directly. Detective Rayner, she said, voice silky smooth. Are you adjusting well? Jake gave her a long, unreadable look. I'm watching everything. She blinked, just once, and then smiled wider. Good, that's what we expect from our residents. She handed him a glass of lemonade. Jake took it, held it for a second, then dumped it into the nearest plant. Cynthia's smile didn't waver, but the twitch in her left eye told Jake one thing. She'd noticed. That night, Emily woke up screaming. She was in pain, real pain, clutching her stomach, pale and shaking. Jake rushed her to the hospital. The doctors stabilized her and the baby, but warned that her body was under mysterious internal stress. I feel like I'm being slowly erased, Emily whispered weakly, as Jake sat by her side. He squeezed her hand, jaw clenched. No more warnings. No more games. The gloves were coming off. Jake didn't leave Emily's side at the hospital for the next 18 hours. Her vitals were stabilizing, but the emotional toll was written across her face. The doctors still couldn't find a clear source of the symptoms. No infections, no traditional toxins. But Jake knew the truth. He just didn't have the legal proof yet. When Emily finally drifted off to sleep, Jake stepped out into the parking lot, pacing under the dim glow of the security lights. The breeze was cold. It carried that same sterile suburban stillness that had begun to feel like a trap. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Dom, I need access to any sealed records on Cynthia Moreau. Employment history, medical records, HOA litigation, whatever you can dig up. Jake, Dom warned, that's not a simple ask. You want me to hack sealed HOA records for a personal vendetta? She poisoned my wife. I'm not asking. There was silence, then Dom's reluctant sigh. "All right, give me 24 hours. Jake hung up and stared back at the hospital doors. He hadn't even unpacked half the moving boxes at home, and now the place already felt cursed. The next morning, Jake returned home briefly to grab essentials for Emily. But something was off. The house smelled like lemon, but too strong, not the usual cleaner. He checked the door locks. No signs of forced entry. But when he entered the kitchen, the tin of tainted tea carefully sealed in an evidence bag the day before was gone, so were the muffins, and the baby vitamins on the counter had been replaced with a different brand, unsealed. Jake checked his security footage. All 3 cameras had gone offline at 3:04 a.m. They came back online at 4:18. Someone had bypassed the system. No tracks, no fingerprints, no signs. Whoever had entered knew exactly what they were doing and what they were looking for. That night, Jake returned to the hospital to find Emily awake, but barely speaking. Her eyes were sunken, her skin dry, and her heartbeat slow. The doctors still insisted it could be hospital food and hydration will help, they said. Jake didn't trust it. He was a cop, not a scientist, but he'd seen this before. Someone poisoning slowly, in microdoses, just beneath the threshold of detection. This wasn't personal vendetta anymore, this was calculated. Back at Serenity Grove, Cynthia held a private HOA gathering in her backyard. Jake didn't attend, but he watched from the tree line. The same neighbors were there. Glasses of wine in hand, smiles fixed in place. Then something odd happened. One man, odor balding, nervous, stood up and whispered something to Cynthia. She didn't say a word in response. Just touched his wrist gently and whispered something back. He nodded like a hypnotized child, and sat back down. Jake snapped photos. Every person, every angle. The next morning, the man's home was empty. Real estate sign in front. For sale by HOA. Gone. Just like that. That evening, Jake got a call from Dom. Got something, Dom said, his voice tense. Cynthia Marrow was the director of a senior care facility 15 years ago. 2 wrongful death suits filed. Both dismissed before trial. Quiet settlements. Bucket this 3 residents died of mysterious causes. All with similar symptoms. Vomiting, fatigue, organ failure. All under Cynthia's care. Jake's blood ran cold. She's done this before. Yeah, Dom replied. But the kicker. The pharmacist who supplied their supplements' same name popped up in HOA records. Sells organic wellness kits to Serenity Grove members today. Jake slammed his palm on the table. She's repeating the same cycle. New faces, same pattern. Later that night, Jake received a knock on the door. A quiet one, just one. Knocked. He opened it cautiously, gun holstered at his hip. Standing there was a young woman, pale, shaking. I shouldn't be here, she whispered, but I know what she's doing. She tried to make me drink it too. Jake narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The woman looked over her shoulder, panicked. I was her assistant. She calls it purifying the neighborhood. You're not safe. None of you are. She handed him a small sealed vial and ran into the night. Inside the vial, a strange, amber-colored liquid. Jake stared at it for a long moment. He didn't know it yet, but this was the key to exposing everything. Or losing everything. Jake didn't sleep for 2 nights after the girl left the vial on his doorstep. He had the liquid tested under a false name at a private lab in another county. The results returned in less than a day. It was a customized herbal compound, with high traces of aconitine, oleandrin, and digitalis. All natural, all deadly in the right doses, all virtually undetectable if administered slowly over time. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he held the report in one hand and stared at Emily's latest ultrasound photo in the other. Their daughter's heartbeat was strong for now. He now had physical evidence, witness testimony, a poisoning compound, and a pattern. He needed one more thing, a confession. Jake called Dom and asked for everything he could dig up on the old assistant who had shown up that night. Her name was Naomi Geller, 24, former HOA clerk. Lived just 4 blocks from Serenity Grove, in a cheap apartment on the edge of the district. 2 jobs. No listed family. She'd vanished from public HOA records 6 months ago. Jake drove out to her apartment that night. The door was open, not wide but just enough to be wrong. He drew his weapon, stepped inside. It smelled like mildew and rotting fruit. A fan whirred pointlessly in the window. The lights were off. On the table was a mug of untouched tea. Still warm. Naomi was gone. No sign of struggle. No phone, no bag, no goodbye, just gone. Jake searched the apartment, hoping for a note, a USB, a hint. He found one thing. An old notebook shoved beneath the couch cushion. Torn at the edges, ink smudged. Inside were scribbled phrases. Don't drink her tea. The board follows her orders. She picks one woman every year. They all miscarried. They said I'd be next. Jake closed the notebook and stared out the window. Cynthia wasn't just power-hungry. She was ritualistic. The next day, Jake filed an anonymous complaint with a friend in internal affairs, passing along copies of the poison test and Naomi's notes carefully redacted to protect her. But within 12 hours, he got a call. Jake, Dom said, your complaint's been flagged, not processed flagged. What the hell does that mean? I mean, someone intercepted it. There's a red mark on your name. Quiet, internal. They're calling it a personal harassment campaign. Jake felt the floor shift beneath him. She got to someone on the inside. Not just someone, Dom replied. I think this whole HOA is plugged into a network. I found references to a private wellness alliance Cynthia co-founded 10 years ago. Sponsors HOA boards across 3 counties. Their motto, Jake waited. Dom read it aloud. Order, purity, continuity. Back at Serenity Grove, Jake began surveilling Cynthia full-time. He'd wired new hidden cams, replaced the tampered ones, even stashed a GPS tracker on her Lexus SUV. She was busy. Daily meetings with homeowners. Quiet gatherings that ended past midnight. Packages delivered directly to her home marked botanical use. Only then came the moment he'd been waiting for. One of the cameras hidden inside the mailbox post caught her opening a vial in her kitchen. She mixed its contents into a container, labeled prenatal blend HOA gift basket. Jake froze the frame. Got the TIMESTAMP. He had her. Jake didn't hesitate. He suited up, grabbed the file, and drove straight to the county police station. But as he neared the gates, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked up. Turn around. Jake. Cynthia's voice was calm, even warm. You're making a very dangerous choice. You're new here. You don't understand how we maintain peace. You're disrupting the order. Jake's voice dropped to ice. You tried to kill my wife. I tried to cleanse a sickness, she said gently. You brought in chaos, crime, disorder. I'm fixing it the only way I know how. He hung up, but when he turned toward the station, he saw at police tape. Officers, news crews, there'd been a break-in. Someone had set fire to the records room. All case files. Destroyed. Jake gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Cynthia was erasing his path forward, and now, the clock was ticking. Jake sat in the hospital parking lot for over an hour, engine off, head in his hands. The fire at the county precinct had erased everything. The toxicology report, the HOA financials Dom had quietly forwarded, even the preliminary surveillance images. Only the copies he'd hidden in the cloud and a USB drive remained. Cynthia was always 2 steps ahead. Emily had been discharged and was recovering slowly at her mother's house now, far away from Serenity Grove. But her condition still wasn't improving. The long-term effects of whatever Cynthia had given her were unclear. Jake had done everything a cop could do. But now he wasn't thinking like a cop. Now he was thinking like a father. And a man with nothing left to lose. He didn't go home. He drove straight to Cynthia's property. Her home, perched at the corner of a cul-de-sac, was neat and sterile. No toys in the yard. No seasonal decorations. Not a single mark of personality, just precision. Perfectly mowed lawn. Potted plants aligned like soldiers. Porch lights glowing like the gates of a false paradise. Jake parked a block away and approached from the side, cutting through hedges. He wasn't alone. A shadow moved near the back fence, slender. Quick, quiet. Jake froze, hand instinctively going to his sidearm. But the figure turned and froze too, then lifted her hands. It was Naomi, alive. Barely. She looked thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and scratches on her arms. They took my apartment, she whispered, voice cracking. I've been hiding in a motel. Jake pulled her behind the fence and asked the only question that mattered. Are you ready to help me bring her down? Naomi looked at him, hollow-eyed. I kept the files, her journals. I know what she's planning. Jake's breath caught. Planning. Naomi nodded. There's another woman on the list. They went back to Naomi's motel room 203. The windows were blacked out with old sheets, and her laptop sat on a milk crate. There were folders everywhere, notes, photos, copies of Cynthia's planner from her time at the retirement facility. She picks one target every year, Naomi said. Usually a woman. Always someone new to the community. Pregnant, sick, or unsuitable. She calls them threats to equilibrium. Naomi handed Jake an envelope. Inside, a photograph of a young woman named Marissa Connors, just moved into Serenity Grove with her fiancé 3 weeks ago. 7 months pregnant. HOA had already fined them twice. She's next, Naomi whispered. Jake took a deep breath. Not on my watch. Jake made his move the next morning. He returned to Serenity Grove disguised as a construction inspector, clipboard in hand, GoPro hidden under a vest. He walked up to Marissa's house, knocked politely. She answered, confused and terrified. We got a letter from the HOA saying we weren't following lawn code, but we haven't even planted anything yet. Jake flashed a fake ID. Need to see any recent HOA deliveries? Gift baskets, teas, wellness kits. Her eyes widened. How do you wait? Yes, I got something yesterday. It's still in the fridge. Inside, Jake carefully opened the bag marked Harmony Wellness Tea. Just like before, no brand, no ingredients listed. No BARCODE. He sealed it and told Marissa not to touch anything. Then he turned and saw the security camera on her front porch. Red, light off. Disabled. Someone had already been there. Jake dropped the clipboard, grabbed the package, and ran. By the time he got back to his car, Naomi had sent him a single text. She knows. She's watching us now. You need to leave before she disappears. Jake replied, no, she's not going anywhere. This time, he had enough. A living witness say second intended victim multiple samples of the same poisoned to video footage of Cynthia mixing it. Jake wasn't going through channels anymore. He was going to force Cynthia to confess publicly, but as he turned onto the main road out of the neighborhood, a black SUV swerved in behind him, fast, too fast. His phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. You should have left it alone, detective. Then the SUV rammed his car from behind. Jake gripped the steering wheel hard as the black SUV slammed into his bumper a second time. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Tinted windows, no plates. He didn't need a badge to know this was a message and a threat. Another ram. Harder. His tires screeched as he cut a sharp right, narrowly avoiding a parked car. His Glock was holstered on his hip, but he didn't dare reach for it yet. He needed distance, an opening. A plan. His mind raced to did Cynthia send HOA board goon. Private security. She clearly had resources beyond any suburban president. This wasn't just HOA politics anymore. This was an organized system, controlled, engineered, purified. He pushed the gas harder. Tires shrieking as he raced through the residential grid. The streets were empty to empty. Even for mid-morning. The SUV kept closing in, brushing his rear bumper, trying to force him into a spin. Jake gritted his teeth. You want to chase? He tapped the brakes just enough to fake a turn, then whipped the wheel and pulled into a narrow alley between two houses. The SUV overshot. Jake jumped out, ducked into a neighbor's backyard, and cut across lawns, leaping a hedge. He ditched his jacket to move faster, then slipped behind a large garden shed. Quiet, hidden. The SUV rolled slowly back down the street, windows still dark. It stopped right in front of the shed. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Then the back window rolled down. And Cynthia. Marrow stared directly at him, smiling. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared, like she was memorizing the moment. Then she rolled the window back up and the SUV drove off. Slow and MBOTHERED. Jake stepped out slowly, breath sharp in his lungs. She wasn't just hunting him, she wanted him to know. He was being hunted. Back at Naomi's motel, the door was ajar again. This time, Jake entered with his gun drawn. Naomi. He called out, scanning. She stepped out of the bathroom slowly, pale, shaking. I think they poisoned me. Jake rushed her to urgent care, where doctors confirmed signs of acute toxicity. She'd drunk from a bottle of water left outside her door anonymous, unopened. It had been injected with belladonna, other plant-based toxin. Legal in trace amounts. Fatal when mixed with the wrong things. She was stable, but barely. You need to end this, she whispered from the hospital bed. Before she erases everything again. Jake went back to his roots, not as a detective, but as a tactician. He downloaded every document Naomi had collected to 3 secure flash drives. He printed photos, prepared copies, even burned DVDs with narrated explanations. He wasn't just going to the cops. He was going to the people. The next morning, Jake walked into the monthly HOA community BBQ. He wore a calm expression. Neutral colors. Nothing threatening. Just another neighbor enjoying the sunshine and bland, grilled chicken. Cynthia was there, of course, holding court under a white tent with a clipboard and her signature glass of lemon water. Jake waited until the crowd was mid-lunch, then he took the portable speaker Naomi had hidden in her files and turned it on. Audio crackled. Then a recording of Cynthia's voice played loud and clear. Some women just don't belong here. They bring filth, disease. You can't trust them to make life decisions, so I make them for them. The crowd froze. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died. Cynthia's smile faltered but not by much. That recording is fake, she said, tone clipped. Jake stepped up to the front. It's not, he said, loud enough for the entire park to hear. And neither are the poison samples, the medical reports, or the lists of previous victims your assistant saved before you tried to kill her too. Someone in the crowd gasped. You want order, Cynthia? Jake asked. Then explain the dossiers, the purified lists. The dead women from your last job, or better yet let the cops question you with the same intensity you gave my wife's tea. For the first time, Cynthia looked genuinely uncomfortable. But before she could respond, black sedans pulled up along the park's edge. Federal agents stepped out. Jake had sent everything to an FBI friend he once saved during a hostage case. The data dump had arrived an hour earlier. Cynthia turned pale. She didn't resist as they cuffed her. She didn't scream. She didn't even blink. But as they loaded her into the vehicle, she looked over her shoulder at Jake and said, You think? It ends with me. Then the car doors slammed shut. Cynthia Marrow was gone, but Jake Rayner didn't feel relieved. In the hours following her arrest, the neighborhood of Serenity Grove fell into a strange silence. No gossip, no board announcements, no watchful eyes over white fences. The weekly HOA email didn't go out. No fines were issued. The flags out front of every home remained perfectly still in the windless heat. It felt like the eye of a storm. Jake sat outside, his home with a mug of black coffee, watching the streets like a man in enemy territory. He knew better than to think Cynthia acted alone. Her final words still rang in his mind. You think it ends with me? Jake's FBI contact had promised a full investigation, but he'd also warned, you cracked a shell. What's inside is older, and meaner, than you think. Later that day, Jake drove to check on Naomi again. She was still in the hospital, slow to recover, her voice shaky. Have you seen the others? She asked. What others? Naomi opened her phone and pulled up a list of names, at least 20. Women from other neighborhoods. Not just Serenity Grove. Not just this town. Places in 3 different counties. Cynthia didn't build the system. She followed it. Jake leaned closer. What system? Naomi hesitated. A group they call themselves, the homeowner. Like an inner circle of HOA power brokers. They started by creating strict community covenants. Then it turned into behavior control. Eventually, eugenics. Subtle. Hidden under the guise of neighborhood perfection. Jake swallowed hard. How far does it go? They train people. Recruit them, especially those who show disciplinary promise. Cynthia was one of their favorites. Jake felt the ground shift under him again. Then they'll replace her. Naomi nodded. They already did. That evening, Jake got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a phone call. A formal envelope, cream-colored, stamped with the HOA seal and tied with a red ribbon. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of parchment. Paper with 2 lines typed neatly. Welcome your new interim HOA president, Mr. Ellis Gray. He expects full cooperation during this transitional period. Jake flipped the paper over. Nothing but Ellis Gray. That name struck a nerve. He rummaged through Naomi's files and found it buried deep in the scanned notes. Gray, real estate developer, former law enforcement, suspended for misuse of federal resources, relocated to private sector in 2014, connected to 4 HOA boards, 2 sealed court records, and 1 non-public settlement involving property-related fatalities. Jake whispered under his breath. She wasn't the boss. She was just the foot soldier. The next morning, Jake walked the neighborhood, subtle, observing. He noticed something different. The neighbors who once acted like puppets now looked tense, nervous. Some avoided eye contact, others had yard signs taken down. But one caught his attention. At the edge of the subdivision, near a cul-de-sac, An elderly woman in a housecoat stood outside her home. On her fence, someone had spray-painted a message. Silence is peace. Jake approached carefully. Did you see who did that? She glanced around, then shook her head. They come at night, she whispered. Not Cynthia. Others. The man with silver hair. He came to my door. Said if I spoke again about Marissa Connors, I'd regret it. Jake's jaw tightened. Ellis Gray, she nodded. He's not like her. She believed in rules. He believes in domination. Later that evening, Jake's FBI contact called. You were right to keep your files backed up. Cynthia's arrest rattled the nest. Jake asked, You mean Ellis Gray? There was a pause. Then, he's not in any official database. Not under that name. But we found an alias match. He's connected to private military firms and a defunct psychological warfare program called Neighborhood Integrity Project. The goal was simple: manipulate small communities to control population behavior. Jake stared out his window. Ellis Gray wasn't a man. He was a system as night fell over Serenity Grove. Jake got a new notification on his home security system. Motion detected backyard. He switched to live view. A man stood perfectly still beneath the trees. Silver hair suit, no fear. Just waiting. And then he smiled into the camera. Jake stared into the camera feed. Locked on the man in the backyard. Tall. Late 50s. Military cut silverhair.com. Still, he didn't move for 20 seconds. Then, without a word, he turned and walked into the darkness, disappearing into the trees behind Jake's property. No rush, no threat, just a message. I see you. Jake rewound the footage and zoomed in. It was him. Ellis Gray. Jake took a breath, then sent the footage straight to his FBI contact. 5 minutes later, a response came through. We're tracking him, but he's using ghost IDs. No digital footprint. Treat him as Black Ops level dangerous. Do not engage alone. Jake locked the windows and checked every camera, weapon, and point of entry. The house was secure but not safe. He called Naomi. No answer. He called again, straight to voicemail. The next morning, Jake's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately. A calm, composed voice spoke. Detective Rayner. Jake didn't respond. You've stirred more mud than you understand. The voice continued. And you've drawn attention from places that haven't been visible for decades. Cynthia was a lesson. You turned it into a war. Where's Naomi? A pause. She's alive, Ellis said. For now. If you want her to stay that way, you'll stop distributing files. You'll destroy your copies. You'll delete everything from the cloud. Jake's jaw clenched. You don't get to dictate terms anymore. Ellis's voice didn't rise. It didn't even shift. You're not protecting your wife anymore, Jake. You're dragging her into a world she can't survive. If you continue, there won't be trials. There won't be headlines. There will just be vanishing. Jake hung up, then he downloaded everything again, this time onto 5 USB drives and mailed them to trusted people across the country. Let Ellis burn the records. He'd already spread the fire. By afternoon, Jake's power went out. Not just his house, the entire block. He checked his phone, no signal. Tried his car, dead battery. Tried his backup generator, disabled. Wires cut. Jake stepped out onto the porch slowly, scanning the street. Empty. Every lawn chair, bike, and swing set was gone, like the neighborhood had been staged. And then he saw them. Men, standing motionless at each end of the street. 3 on each side. Dressed like utility workers. No logos. Jake stepped back inside and bolted the door. They weren't there to talk. They were there to corner. Jake moved fast. Grabbed the burner phone, the satellite laptop, and his badge. He still had federal credentials from Joint Task Force clearance. Enough to make most people think twice. But Ellis Gray wasn't most people. The front window shattered. Jake hit the floor. Glass rained down. 2 figures outside. No faces. Just black visors and tranquilizer rifles. He rolled across the floor, grabbed his Glock, and fired twice, both rounds striking the porch rail as a warning. The figures retreated. For now, Jake grabbed the last USB drive and slipped it into a waterproof case. He shoved it into the vent shaft behind the fireplace. Then he hit the emergency lock protocol on his laptop, a custom-coded command to send a final encrypted copy to a remote server under Naomi's alias. If she was still alive, she'd get it. That night, Jake left the neighborhood on foot, dressed in a borrowed HOA maintenance uniform. No car, no phone, just instinct. He walked for miles until he found a gas station with a working landline, called Dom from a payphone. Dom, they've taken over. It's a machine. Bigger than we thought. They've got Naomi. They tried to black us out. Dom was quiet, then said, "You're not crazy, Jake. I got followed 2 nights ago. My office was reorganized without notice. They're watching me too." Jake closed his eyes. "This doesn't end with arrest warrants." "No," Dom replied. "It ends with exposure." By morning, a package appeared on Jake's porch, no postage, no signature. Inside, Naomi's cell phone, smashed dot in a photo, her bound to a chair, gagged with a note in typed letters, "You're playing a very dangerous game. One more move." And the next package contains something else. Jake folded the photo and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He didn't respond, didn't panic. He just whispered to himself, "You just gave me permission." Jake didn't sleep. He sat in the attic above his garage, watching the neighborhood through a cracked vent as dawn broke across Serenity Grove. His phone buzzed. One of the 5 USB drives he'd sent out had been uploaded publicly. Someone had gotten it and posted it anonymously. The files were out. Nationwide now. The list of names, the poisons, Cynthia's audio tapes, Naomi's testimony, the home order's structure, even Ellis Gray's alleged Black Ops profile. It had gone viral in less than 6 hours. Hashtags were trending. Law enforcement agencies were scrambling to verify. Victims were coming forward from other towns. Whistleblowers, former board members, nurses, HOA, employees. Ellis Gray's silence was about to end, but Jake knew better than to think exposure meant defeat. Men like Ellis didn't run, they buried everything around them before they fell. That evening, Jake made his move. Dom met him 2 counties over in an abandoned ranger station, out of GPS range, off the grid. Dom brought a burner phone and a file, tracked a thermal signal consistent with a generator flare in the woods northwest of the subdivision. Surveillance blind spot. Private land, no listings. Jake opened the file. Inside, infrared stills Naomi, bound, moved between 2 trailers, surrounded by motion sensors. "Let's go," Jake said. Dom looked him dead in the eye. "We do this. We don't walk out the same men." Jake holstered his gun. "We're not the same men. We lost that the moment they poisoned my wife." They struck at 2:03 a.m. Jake and Dom cut through the trees, rifles slung, night vision gear on. The camp was low-tech, but efficient just like Black Ops. 2 guards outside, 1 on the roof, and the faint sound of soft humming generator noise. They neutralized the outer guards silently, fast and clean. No deaths. Not yet. Inside one trailer, Naomi sat dazed, alive but weak, strapped to a chair. Eyes wide as Jake burst in, she whispered, "He's here, below." Dom stayed to free her. Jake moved to the back trailer. There, behind a false wall, was a stairwell leading underground. Jake descended alone. The bunker was sterile. Too clean. Fluorescent lights buzzed above long white walls, and an entire row of screens blinked with neighborhood feeds cameras planted all over the region. Serenity Grove, Pinewind, Clearvale, all monitored. In the center of it all stood EllisGray.com, composed, wearing the same silver-haired precision and iron posture of a general. "You made it," Ellis said, turning slowly. "I expected you'd come. Men like us don't let things go. It's what makes us useful to the system." Jake raised his weapon. Ellis didn't flinch. "You won't stop it," Ellis said. "Take me in. Expose everything. Burn it down. Someone else replaces me tomorrow. That's how order works. That's how we survive chaos." Jake's hand didn't tremble. "You poisoned my wife. You kidnapped Naomi. You tried to erase families, to meet your sick idea of peace." Ellis stepped forward. "No, I cleansed environments. I created neighborhoods without crime, without rot. You just didn't understand the sacrifice required." Jake pulled the trigger once fired into the surveillance equipment behind Ellis. Sparks flew, screens shattered. Fire alarm lights blinked. "I'm not here to arrest you," Jake said. Outside, Dom lit the signal flare. Within minutes, 2 helicopters appeared and marked, but Federal Jake had called in every last favor. He didn't trust the system, but he'd forced it to look. Ellis Gray was taken into custody without incident, but not before whispering one last line to Jake. "There's always another chapter." 2 months later, Emily was safe. Their baby girl Leno was born healthy, smiling. The house in Serenity Grove was sold and bulldozed by federal order. Naomi recovered and was placed into witness protection. And Jake, he returned to work, but not as a cop. He now led an independent task force tracking domestic psychological cells, posing as HOAs. The exposure of the home order had cracked open a massive federal investigation. Hundreds of communities, thousands of victims, and one simple truth. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a welcome packet and a clipboard. Ending twist, 6 months later. In a different state, a new family moved into a freshly constructed neighborhood called Tranquil Haven Estates. A woman with perfect posture, sharp eyes, and a beige suit greeted them with a smile. "Welcome to the community," she said sweetly. Her nama tag read, A. Gray, the daughter. The cycle had already begun again.